The two Suburbans rolled to a silent stop a quarter-mile from the industrial site, their matte black frames disappearing into the shadows of the surrounding trees. Gunnar exited first, his cybernetic arm gleaming faintly in the moonlight as he signaled for the team to move out. The group spread out quickly, each member slipping into their assigned positions with practiced precision. The faint rustle of gear and the quiet murmur of comms filled the air, the pack's professionalism on full display. Ashley moved swiftly, her steps silent, as Beta followed closely at her heels. DeSera trailed a few paces behind, her sniper rifle slung across her back. They reached a nearby warehouse, its roof providing the perfect vantage point. Ashley scaled the ladder effortlessly, Beta leaping up beside her as Desera climbed behind. Settling into position, Desera unfolded her rifle's bipod and peered through the scope, her sharp grey eyes scanning the site below. "Overwatch in position," she murmured into the comms. Ashley nodded, setting up her spotting scope. "Beta and I have your 6. Clara and Jewel moved toward the tree line, their steps measured and deliberate. Omega and Alpha padded beside them, their ears twitching at every faint sound. Once concealed among the trees, Clara adjusted the P90 strapped to her chest, her fingers brushing over the smooth surface. "Jewel, how's the drone looking?" she asked quietly. Jewel tapped her wrist-mounted controller, the stealth drone launching silently into the air. Its small, dark form blended seamlessly into the night sky as it began its patrol. "Drone's up and scanning. So far, all clear." "Good," Clara replied, her eyes never leaving the site ahead. "Let's keep it that way." On the outskirts of the site, Darren and Gunnar worked opposite sides of the perimeter. Darren's enchanted shotgun, Thunderstrike, rested easily in his grip, his eyes sharp as he scanned the shadows. "Perimeter secure so far," he reported, his tone casual but alert. Gunnar moved like a ghost through the terrain, Starbreaker cradled in his hands. His every step was deliberate, his cybernetic arm flexing instinctively as he moved between the abandoned structures. "Stay sharp," he replied through the comms. "This place is too quiet." Eli, Eliana, and Maelorion entered the main area of the industrial site, their focus sharp. Eli's tablet emitted a faint glow as she scanned for magical anomalies, her violet eyes darting between the screen and their surroundings. "There's residual energy here," she said quietly. "Old, but strong." Eliana knelt beside a set of faintly glowing runes etched into the ground. Her fingers traced the symbols with care. "This isn't just a hiding spot. Someone's been drawing power from this site." Melorian stood nearby, his gaze shifting between the pack's movements. "Your team is impressive," he admitted, his tone thoughtful. "Their discipline rivals that of Alfheim's finest." Eliana glanced up, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "They've earned that praise, Maelorian. They've faced challenges no one should survive, and yet they do." Shade moved like smoke through the darkness, his wiry frame blending seamlessly into the shadows. His eyes darted to Karina, who stood watch nearby, her posture tense, but controlled. "I don't like this," Karina muttered through the comms. "Too many blind spots." Shade's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Then let's keep our eyes open." The two moved in tandem, their bond of trust evident in their silent coordination. As the team worked their respective areas, the tension thickened. The drone fed back faint heat signatures, small animals, nothing humanoid. DeSera tracked movement through her scope, but it was only the occasional flicker of a branch swaying in the wind. "Almost done," Eli reported. "A few more scans and we'll—" Her words cut off abruptly as her screen flickered. "What is it?" Gunnar asked, his voice sharp. Eli frowned, tapping the screen. "Not sure. There was a surge. Something I haven't seen before." "I felt it too," Eliana added, her hand hovering over the runes she'd been studying. "Something's shifted." "Everyone, stay alert," Gunnar ordered, his voice low but commanding. "Eyes open, comms active." The team moved with renewed focus, their professionalism shining through even as the unease grew. Mylorion stood tall, his calm demeanor unwavering as he watched the pack in action. "They are relentless," he murmured to Eliana, his respect evident. "They have to be," Eliana replied, pride clear in her voice. "It's what's kept them alive." As the final scans completed, the team began to regroup near the central structure. The silence was deafening, every member hyper-aware of the tension that lingered in the air. The industrial site fell into a tense quiet, the faint hum of Jules' stealth drone circling overhead the only sound. The pack had regrouped, their positions solid and their focus unwavering. Gunner's voice crackled through the comms, low and commanding. "Status check. Everyone hold position. We're almost done here." Eli glanced at her tablet, her fingers flicking across the screen. "Last scan coming through. There's still some residual energy, but—" She froze, the screen flickering violently before the device went black. Her sharp intake of breath was audible through the comms. "Eli!" Gunner's voice cut through. "What is it?" I'm not sure," Eli said, her voice uneasy. "The energy just spiked. It's like something's here." Before anyone could respond, a low, resonant laugh echoed through the air, cutting through the silence like a blade. It was rich and mocking, carrying an unnatural weight that sent a shiver down every spine. My, a voice purred, smooth and teasing. "What an industrious little group you are." The air rippled near the center of the site, and with a faint shimmer she appeared. Ravina stepped forward, her movements fluid and deliberate, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders like a veil of shadow. Her striking eyes glowed faintly, her smile playful yet unnerving. "I almost feel bad interrupting such dedication," she said, her tone dripping with mock admiration. "But curiosity got the better of me." The pack froze, their training kicking in as weapons shifted to cover the new threat. Ashley's voice was the first to break the silence. "Gunner, we've got a visual. This one's not friendly." "Hold positions," Gunner ordered, his cybernetic arm flexing as he raised Starbreaker, his gaze locked on Ravina. "Identify yourself." Ravina laughed again, her voice like silk. "So serious, aren't you? You can call me Ravina. I've been watching you, and I must say, you've caught my interest." Before Gunner could reply, the shadows around Ravina shifted, and figures emerged. At first glance, they appeared humanoid, but their glowing, unnatural eyes and the dark veins pulsing beneath their skin told another story. They moved with an erratic, predatory grace, their bodies taut with barely contained energy. Eli's voice crackled through the comms, laced with urgency. "Those aren't normal supernaturals. The drugs all over them." "Thralls," Eliana murmured, her tone grim. "She's controlling them." Ravina clapped her hands lightly, the sound almost mocking. "Very good. Consider this a demonstration. I've always been curious how well my creations would fare against such a tightly knit little group." Ravina raised a hand, and the thralls attacked. They moved with blinding speed, their enhanced strength on full display as they charged the pack's positions. Ashley and Desera. From her perch, Desera tracked the thralls through her scope, picking them off with precise, calculated shots. Ashley directed Beta with sharp commands, the wolf darting through the chaos below, her movements swift and lethal. "Two more heading your way," Ashley called out, her spotting scope zeroing in on the advancing threats. "Got it," Desera replied, exhaling as she fired. The shot rang out, clean and sharp, dropping a thrall mid-charge. Chlora, Jewel, Omega, and Alpha. In the tree line, Chlora unleashed a burst from her P90, the weapon's rapid fire forcing two thralls to scatter. Omega and Alpha lunged at another, their powerful jaws clamping down as they brought the figure to the ground. Jewel's drone hovered above, marking targets and feeding intel to the team. "There's another cluster coming from the east," she warned, her voice steady despite the chaos. Darren and Shade. At the perimeter, Darren's shotgun roared, Thunderstrike's enchanted rounds slamming into a thrall and sending it flying. This is getting interesting, he muttered, reloading quickly. Keebler, you still with me? Focus, Darren, Eli snapped through the comms, her voice sharp. I'm busy. Shade moved like a phantom through the shadows, his blade flashing as he struck down another thrall. His voice was calm, almost detached. More coming. Stay alert. Aeliana and Myelorion. In the center, Aeliana raised a shimmering barrier of light, shielding herself and Maelorion from an oncoming attack. The senior council member stepped forward, his blade glowing faintly as he dispatched a thrall with swift, calculated precision. They're formidable, Maelorion remarked, his tone neutral. But unstable. They're puppets, Aeliana replied, her voice tinged with anger. And she's pulling the strings. Gunnar and Ravina. Gunnar advanced on Ravina, his movements deliberate. Starbreaker's shots rang out, forcing her to deflect with swirling shields of dark energy. You're full of surprises, Ravina said, her smile widening. No wonder they follow you. Drop the act, Gunnar growled. What do you want? Ravina's eyes gleamed, her amusement never wavering. To see what you're capable of. Consider this. A warm-up. Despite their strength, the thralls began to falter. Their movements grew erratic, the drug's effects pushing their bodies beyond their limits. One collapsed entirely, its form convulsing as black veins spread like cracks across its skin. Eli's voice cut through the comms. They're burning out. Whatever's in that drug, it's unstable. Good, Darren muttered. Means they'll stop coming. But Ravina wasn't finished. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a wave of dark energy toward Gunnar, forcing him to dive for cover. You're impressive, she mused, but predictable. As the last of the thralls fell, Ravina stepped back, her wings flickering into view for just a moment. This was enlightening, she said, her tone light. I'll be watching, Pack. Let's see if you're as strong as you think. With that, she vanished, the shadows swallowing her whole. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ragged breathing of the team. The pack regrouped, their expressions grim. Jewel immediately began tending to the injured thralls, her medical skills working to stabilize what was left of them. Gunnar surveyed the team, his voice steady but cold. Everyone accounted for? A chorus of affirmations followed, but the unease lingered. This isn't over, Gunnar said, his gaze hard. She's testing us, and we need to be ready for whatever's next. The pack exchanged glances, the weight of the encounter settling over them. Ravina had left her mark, and the fight was far from over. With the site secure, Gunnar pulled out his secure comms device. Sophia, he said, his tone grim. We've got a situation. Ravina made a move and she brought drugged supernaturals. They're enhanced, unstable and lethal. Sophia's response was immediate. How bad? Bad enough, Gunnar replied. We've got survivors, but the drug's effects are catastrophic. We need this sanctioned as a homeland event. Fast. Cops are already on site. I'll handle it, Sophia said firmly. Stay put. Clean-up teams en route. The sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder as the first squad cars pulled up to the site's perimeter. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness, a stark contrast to the shadows clinging to the industrial ruins. Gunnar's voice came through the comms, calm and sharp. Everyone stick to your assignments. Use the locals to secure the outer perimeter, but they don't come in. Darren, you're on them. On it, Darren replied, adjusting Thunderstrike on his shoulder as he strode toward the gathering cluster of officers. He turned, smirking back at the group. Don't let me down, Keebler. Eli's sigh crackled through the comms. Stay professional, Darren. Clara, Jewel, Gunnar continued, his tone steady. Get the wolves into the SUVs. No one sees them. Jewel, prep one of the wounded thralls for extraction. I want it stabilized and ready to move. Clara was already guiding Omega and Alpha toward one of the black Suburbans. Their large forms moved quietly, their trust in her evident. Beta followed closely behind, her sleek grey fur blending with the shadows. Jewel crouched beside the thrall Clara had subdued earlier. The creature's shallow breathing and erratic movements were unsettling, but Jewel's hands were steady as she applied restraints and administered a sedative. "This one's holding, but it's on borrowed time," she said into the comms. "Get it out," Gunnar ordered. "Bianca's team will assist." Moments later, the backup crew arrived, their own vehicles pulling up quietly. Bianca stepped out, her demeanour no nonsense as she assessed the scene. "We'll get them off site," she assured Gunnar, nodding toward the secured thrall and the wolves. "Go," Gunnar said, his cybernetic arm flexing as he scanned the area. "Keep it tight." Gunnar stood at the center of the operation, his cybernetic arm flexing absently as he scanned the surroundings. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, signaling that the local police weren't far off. "Everyone stay sharp," Gunnar said, his voice cutting through the comms like steel. "We're not leaving until Sophia's team arrives, but I don't want any surprises. Stick to your assignments." The pack moved with practiced precision, each member falling into their designated roles. This wasn't their first encounter with chaos, and it wouldn't be their last. From their rooftop perch, Ashley adjusted her binoculars, the lenses catching the faint glint of distant streetlights. Beside her, DeSara had her sniper rifle trained on the growing crowd forming near the police perimeter. "DeSara, you seeing this?" Ashley asked, her tone low. DeSara's scope shifted slightly. "Yeah, I see her," she replied, her voice flat. "Rose." Ashley frowned, focusing her binoculars. There she was, Rose. The unofficial queen of the Shadow Realm bar stood at the edge of the gathering, her dark eyes fixed on the sight. Her posture was casual, almost disinterested, but Ashley knew better. Rose wasn't one to show up without reason. "She's watching," Ashley muttered. DeSara nodded. "She's always watching. Question is, why now?" At the epicenter of the site, Eli's tablet beeped softly as it scanned for magical anomalies. The screen pulsed with energy, flickering erratically as if struggling to process what it was detecting. "Something here is unstable," Eli murmured, her fingers dancing across the screen. "It's like the energy is being pulled in multiple directions." Eliana knelt beside her, her hands glowing faintly as she traced the magical residue in the air. "This wasn't just an attack," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "It's deliberate. She wanted us to find this." "Ravina doesn't leave breadcrumbs unless she's planning something bigger," Maelorian added, his tone grave. His sharp gaze scanned the ruins. "She's testing your team, seeing how you respond under pressure." Eli frowned. "Then let's give her something to think about." Jewel crouched beside one of the subdued thralls, her medical kit spread out around her. The creature twitched weakly, its glowing eyes flickering. "This one's barely holding on," she muttered. "Whatever's in that drug is burning them out fast." "Can you stabilize it?" Clara asked. "I'll try," Jewel said, injecting the thrall with a sedative. "But it won't hold for long." Clara nodded, her gaze shifting to the SUVs. "Let's get them secured. We don't need extra eyes on this." Moving through the darkness, Shade and Karina checked for any lingering threats. Shade's movements were silent, his presence barely a whisper against the night. Karina followed closely, her hand resting on the hilt of her katana. "She's out there," Karina said, her sharp violet eyes glinting. "Watching." "Let her watch," Shade replied. "She won't interfere. Not yet." Karina smirked faintly. "You sound so sure." "I've been wrong before," Shade admitted, "but not often." At the perimeter, Darren leaned casually against a barricade as the first squad car arrived. The officers stepped out cautiously, their eyes scanning the scene with suspicion. "Evening, gentlemen," Darren said, flashing a disarming smile. "Appreciate you coming out. We've got it handled from here, though." The lead sergeant, a grizzled man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Handled? Doesn't look handled to me. And who exactly are you?" "Darren," he replied smoothly, pulling out his Homeland Security badge. "We're running a containment op here. Federal level. Appreciate your help setting up a perimeter." The sergeant frowned. "This looks like a war zone. You expect me to believe this is containment?" Darren chuckled, shaking his head. Trust me, it's better than it looks. You hold the line, keep the press out, and I'll make sure your captain gets a glowing review. The sergeant hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. All right, but I want a full debrief later. You'll get one, Darren promised. Eventually. Gunner's voice crackled through the comms. Darren, status. Cops are holding, Darren replied. But they've got questions. I'm keeping them out of the sight. Good, Gunner said. Keep them busy. We've got work to finish here. He glanced toward the distant figure of Rose, his sharp gaze narrowing. Shade, Karina. Keep an eye on our visitor. If she makes a move, I want to know. Already on it, Shade replied. The night stretched on, the team's focus unwavering. Above them, the faint thrum of helicopters signaled that Sophia's team was on its way. But for now, the pack remained alone, holding the line against chaos. The low, rhythmic thrum of helicopter blades filled the air, growing louder as two black aircraft descended upon the industrial site. Dust swirled, and the flashing red and blue lights of the police perimeter reflected off their glossy surfaces. The Homeland Security insignia emblazoned on the helicopters gleamed faintly in the moonlight. Gunner stood at the center of the site, his sharp blue eyes scanning the area as he spoke into the comms. Heads up, Sophia's team is landing. Stay sharp and stick to your assignments until the handoff is complete. The helicopters touched down on a cleared stretch of concrete, their doors sliding open to reveal a group of heavily armed operatives. The team moved with precision, their dark tactical uniforms and weapons glinting under the floodlights they had deployed. At the back of the second chopper, Sophia stepped out, her tailored jacket fluttering in the downdraft. She surveyed the scene with a practiced eye before striding toward Gunner. Her heels clicked against the concrete, her posture straight and commanding. Gunner, Sophia said, her tone brisk but respectful. You've got a mess here. We've had worse, Gunner replied, his cybernetic arm resting casually at his side. You're late. You're welcome, she countered, a hint of a smirk breaking her professional demeanor. What's the situation? As Sophia's operatives began spreading out, Gunner laid out the details. We were hit by Ravina, drugged thralls, supernaturals under her control. She left a mark and made a statement. My team secured the scene, stabilized one of the thralls, and gathered as much evidence as we could. Sophia nodded, her expression darkening. And the locals? Darren's got them playing perimeter duty, Gunner said. But they've got questions. I'll handle them, Sophia assured him. You've done enough. My team will clean this up. Her operatives moved efficiently, securing the site and ushering the police out to an extended perimeter. One officer attempted to question a Homeland operative, only to be met with a curt, "This is federal jurisdiction. Fall back." From her vantage point at the edge of the police perimeter, Rose remained an enigmatic presence. She watched as Homeland took over, her smirk faint but knowing. For now, she stayed out of sight, her dark eyes following Sophia's operatives as they moved with purpose. Gunner's voice rang through the comms. Pack, regroup, time to pull out. One by one, the team gathered near the SUVs, their movements smooth and practiced. Aeliana and Mylorion stood slightly apart, their tactical gear blending them into the team, though their ethereal presence was impossible to fully disguise. Sophia approached Gunner one last time. I'll keep you updated on what we find. And Gunner, good work. As always. Gunner gave her a curt nod. Just make sure this stays off the radar. As the SUVs pulled away, the pack remained silent, the weight of the night's events settling over them. In the lead vehicle, Gunner sat with Aeliana, Malorian Eli, and Darren, his sharp eye fixed on the road ahead. That went smoother than expected, Darren said, breaking the silence. Cops didn't even try to push past me. Eli glanced at him. Don't let it go to your head, Darren. Keebler, I'd say you're impressed, Darren replied, his grin widening. Eli rolled her eyes. I'd say you're insufferable. Gunner's voice cut through the banter, calm but firm. Focus. This was just the first round. Ravina isn't done, and neither are we. The pack fell silent again, the hum of the engine filling the space as they drove into the night, the workshop awaiting their return.
All right, you've made it this far. That means either you like what you're seeing, or you're lost. Either way, no harm in sticking around, right? Go on, hit that subscribe button, join the team. And while you're at it, hit like, because, let's be honest, you're already invested. And the bell? That's for you if you don't want to miss any of the action. You wouldn't want me to come find you. See you soon. And remember, once you're in, you're family.